And kindness is karma. So be as kind to as many people as you can, and do remember to be kind to yourselves. Catch you guys next week for more, but of course, tomorrow more sunrise. So don't go anywhere. Just keep it locked and see it happen. Have a blessed day and be magnificent. Bye. Mwah.
We're jamming, and I hope you like jamming too. And the rules ain't about, we can do it anyhow. I and I will see you through. 'Cause every day we pay the price, we're the living sacrifice. Jamming till the jam is through. We're jamming. To think that jamming was a thing of the past. We're jamming. And I hope this jam is gonna last. No bullet will stop us now. We need to beg, no, we won't bow. Neither can be bought nor sold. We all defend the right. Our children must unite. Life is worth much more than gold. We're jamming, 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 jamming. And we're jamming in the name of the Lord. We're jamming, 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 jamming.
Check 1, 2. You know it's Fahrenheit, aka Fahrenheit, and you're watching CVM. Keep it locked right here.
Good evening. Tonight on Lead Story, we examine the structures that shape the boundaries of choice in modern Jamaica. The budget debate continues in Parliament as the country grapples with the economic aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. Hurricane Melissa left this country with a bill that stands at US $12.2 billion. It's now been increased. It's now 56.7% of the country's entire annual economic output. The government is walking a fiscal tightrope between reconstruction and debt sustainability. We'll break down what the opposition spokesperson on finance now says the numbers really mean for Jamaicans. Then, a major legal development in the education system. The Supreme Court has ordered the reinstatement of Dr. Marjorie Fullerton as principal of Merl Grove High School after her dismissal in 2022. The court found the disciplinary process was tainted with bias. What does that decision mean for school boards across Jamaica? And later, a conversation about the biology of choice. As more Jamaicans delay having children for economic and career reasons, do medical realities, including conditions like endometriosis, mean some people may be losing that option without realizing it? I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and this is Lead Story. The backdrop to this year's budget debate is the economic aftermath of Hurricane Melissa, a storm that caused an estimated US $12.2 billion, or 56.7% of the country's entire annual economic output. Finance Minister Favour Williams has presented a budget of approximately 1.4 trillion Jamaican dollars, framed as a national reconstruction budget. But today in Parliament, Opposition's finance spokesman Julian Robinson questioned whether the government's growth assumptions are too optimistic for a country still recovering from a major disaster. To help us break down the economic arguments behind the politics, we're joined by economist Keenan Faulkner. Keenan, good evening and welcome to Lead Story.
Hi Jody, good evening, how are you?
I'm well and better off now for having you join us again and put in context what it is that we have been hearing. The budget debate continued today with Julian Robinson coming out and saying this budget is really built on growth assumptions that he says may not hold up given the scale of the economic shock from Hurricane Melissa. When you look at the revenue projections, deficit targets, and the government's expected rate of recovery, do those assumptions strike you as realistic?
Well, based on what the Independent Fiscal Commission was saying, the concern that they have primarily is that GDP nominally is overstated, which then has implications for tax revenues, because then that means that tax revenues come in overinflated, and then it could be that you're planning for revenues that may not yet materialize. So that was the whole basis of the debate about GDP deflator as well as the CPI. What's more worrying, I would say, is that the peak of recovery growth is expected to only be 3%. And that means that, you will now normalize to 1 to 2% below that afterwards. During COVID, it was much higher. You had peak recovery growth at around maybe 14% in the immediate aftermath in the first quarter after the initial shock. So it's about getting growth. The opposition spokesman on finance spoke about NARA. I think more details are needed around it. I don't think we can afford any delays in its establishment and operationalization. And I think the Prime Minister may speak more to it, but it's really now about growth. The size of our deficits for the next 4 years at least will be somewhere between 1.5 and 5. So by the time we get to 2030, we are looking at a deficit of still $86 billion. So we don't grow out of that in a single year. It means that deficits could continue to be prolonged after that, and that will only continue to cause more economic strain.
Keenan, we saw Julian Robinson, opposition spokesman on finance, on his feet today in the continuation of the budget debate. And he said the government is trying to close an estimated $80 billion revenue gap while also doing what you spoke about, using things like NARA, the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, to fund major reconstruction projects. But look at Jamaica's size. How difficult is it for a small, open economy like Jamaica to raise that level of revenue without slowing the recovery?
Well, it could be difficult in a sense because during the recovery period, you don't expect tax revenues to rebound automatically. You need a sort of stimulus. And it's consumption spending that really drives that initial recovery because you get a lag or a delay in terms of the growth from building infrastructure. You don't finish infrastructure within 6 months to a year. That could take some time, and it's only recorded as growth when it is completed. So for now, we have to rely on consumer spending to really drive recovery, and you don't want taxes to impede that. You want it to be facilitated to the best extent possible, given our size and the fact that our size complicates it. So you have a lot of persons who are not really very high wage earners. The average wage in Jamaica is still very low, and our population is small. So that complicates consumer spending at a time now when it really needs to accelerate the most.
Jamaica also spent more than a decade reducing its debt burden, Keenan, from about 147% of GDP in 2013 to around 70% before the hurricane. How much risk is there that this moment could reverse that hard-won progress?
Well, based on the estimates so far, debt will go up to around 68% before it declines back to 60% by 2030. But that is not considered unsustainable. It's a far cry from the days when we were at 140% of GDP. So it's not even to be considered really seriously elevated. And that was the benefit of having built up fiscal buffers over the previous decade and a half, because that meant that we have the space. So we had space to borrow. We had the room where we did not really borrow much money from the multilaterals, and our rate of amortization exceeded the rate at which we issued new debt. So it meant that we stabilized the debt stock somewhere around 2 to 2 trillion Jamaican dollars. And as a result, that gave us the room to absorb this shock. And I think that the government needs to utilize it fully, which may mean more domestic borrowing. And, the opposition spokesperson on finance also mentioned an increase in potentially their suggestion would have been to have more treasury bills issued, which is essentially, people buying government bonds, benchmark investment notes, and things like that, as opposed to external borrowing, which is not projected to go up very much. So most of the increase in the debt stock is really going to be from domestic rather than external borrowing.
Julian Robinson has been inside Lead Story before. He'll be joining us again after his budget presentation tomorrow inside the show. And he's spoken quite a lot about those two one-off transactions that the government of Jamaica did, the Norman Manley and the Sangster Airport revenue securitizations. He said they generated approximately $136 billion in temporary financing. But he argues those deals papered over structural revenue weaknesses that the hurricane has now fully exposed. Is that a fair characterization?
So proceeds from securitization, ideally, you don't want that to replace tax revenue. What you want it to do is to augment existing tax revenue if you need it. So it is not something that you should rely on in the future, as a matter of course or routine. Rather, you have it when you have emergency situations. So we had Hurricane Beryl last year, and that helped to plug a gap where we received $75 billion from it. We shouldn't rely on it as a matter of course, but it did, in a sense, mask the decline previously that leading up to Hurricane Beryl, because we hit a peak of recovery growth sometime around January 2023, and that started to fall away for the next 18 months, where you had deceleration in the economy. So each successive quarter would have recorded or registered growth less than the quarter before it. And that was not really a positive sign. It was a worrying signal about the capacity of the economy to sustain growth in the aftermath of crises. And the reason for this is because we have not addressed structural investments in the economy. So in terms of both government spending and private spending, we have not. That is what drives long-term growth. Consumer spending will give you a short and temporary bump, but it's not enough to sustain it in the long run. So when that steam runs out, then you return to your usual long-run growth of 1 to 2%.
I think that is going to be something that then worries people as they look not only at this budget, but also hearing the budget debate going back and forth. For you, Keenan, if the economic growth built into this budget doesn't materialize, everything doesn't work out the way we want it to, we're not seeing the kind of private sector growth that we had hoped for, whether it's because of global conditions or domestic constraints, where does the pressure fall first in the government's fiscal plan?
Well, the longer we return to meaningful growth, or the longer we take to achieve it, because we have not really had it to be able to return to it means that we will continue to record deficits and for an extended period. So if you prolong the deficits that you record, it means that you may have to eventually, not this year or the year after, but later down, consider other further revenue measures or cutting expenditure or increasing borrowing. And all of those come with its own fiscal risks. And none of them can be socially or politically popular.
And none of them is what anybody at home right now, Keenan Faulkner, is interested in hearing, whether it's a supplementary budget or additional things that might be put on the table if all does not pan out the way that we hoped. We know that we have the opposition leader and then the Prime Minister next week, so we look forward to seeing how they build out not only the feedback but also some of the things that we're looking for in this budget as well. Keenan Faulkner, economist, thanks so much for joining us today inside Lead Story, helping us to break down the economic realities behind this year's budget debate.
Thank you, Jody.
A pleasure to have you, Keenan. Now we're going to turn to a significant legal development in Jamaica's education system. The Supreme Court has ordered the reinstatement of the principal of Merl Grove High School. We'll talk about why she had to be removed and what that means next inside Lead Story.
business is fast, easy, flexible, and costs less. Oh, entrepreneurs, let's go digital! The government of Jamaica and the European Union present Digital Jamaica Training Series. Learn how technology grows your business. Choose the right digital tools. Manage your staff, customers, and money digitally. Data security and privacy. Artificial intelligence. We'll be in every parish. Apply online. www.jbdc.net. Log on fast. Digital Jamaica. Powering connectivity for MSMEs.
If you're a woman in business, it's time to go bigger.
Your ambition is calling, and Horizon for Women in Business is answering.
Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services designed for women entrepreneurs to unlock the capital you need to grow and take your business beyond limits. With quick approval, flexible repayment, and low interest rates, your success is on the horizon.
Call us now. The funds are waiting.
Your success is on the horizon.
Jamaica's unemployment rate has fallen to 3.3%, down from 13.2% in 2016. Our government's continued focus on job creation is delivering real results. We are building Jamaica. The Time by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Thanks for staying with us inside Lead Story. We now turn to a significant legal development in Jamaica's education system. The Supreme Court has ordered the reinstatement of Dr. Marjorie Fullerton as principal of Merl Grove High School after her dismissal in March 2022. Justice Andrea Thomas found that the disciplinary process used by the school's Board of Management was tainted with bias because those who brought the complaint were also involved in the decision to terminate her employment. To help us understand the legal significance of this ruling, we're joined by attorney at law in this case representing Marjorie Fullerton, Nico Pagan. Good evening and welcome to Lead Story, counsel.
Thank you. And just one correction.
Yes.
I am one of the lawyers.
One of. So you have Miss Michelle Champagne representing
That's
as
correct.
well from your firm.
Yeah.
There you go. All
Yes.
right, Nico Pagan, let's start off with you because we have heard this court's decision that was handed down in simple terms. Help us understand the key legal findings that led to the Supreme Court to order a principal who had been removed as principal of her school, Merl Grove, to now be reinstated. Why did they want Dr. Fullerton back in her position based on what they found?
The simple answer to that is fairness. Every person who has been charged, whether it's a disciplinary charge or a criminal charge, is entitled to a fair hearing. And the substratum of what occurred in terms of the hearing before the board, the personal committee of the board, the tribunal, we complained that Dr. Fullerton did not receive a fair hearing, and that was the finding of the Supreme Court.
So the Supreme Court took a look at what it is that you said it wasn't a fair hearing, but the judgment says more than that, stating that the disciplinary process was tainted with bias. It's one thing for it to not be fair, you know. Tainted with bias is very harsh language from the court. What kind of procedural failures would lead a court to reach that weighty conclusion?
Okay, so under the Charter of Rights that we have, each person who is before a body that is adjudicating or judging them, they are required to be impartial and independent. And so if their actions have any sense of bias, it would mean that that person who they are judging, they would not do so in a fair and dispassionate manner. And so that is why in this instance, there was a finding that the personal committee was biased based on certain comments that they made and essentially the approach that they took when they tried Dr. Fullerton. From all indications, the personal committee gave the appearance as though they were the ones who had a complaint against Dr. Fullerton, that they are the ones who are the complainants, they are the ones who are judging her, and they're the ones who would find her guilty. And they, in fact, did so. So it would be no surprise if someone indicated to you that, listen, I have this complaint against you, and they're the same persons who are trying you, that they would ultimately find you guilty.
Because having been the ones then that complained about you, there seems to be nothing that would allow them to say, oh, but my complaint isn't valid. It's much likely that they'd get rid of you. One of the court's main concerns was that grievance. Where is it that we are also seeing the court then saying, all right, this is not only a problem, it's a breach, and a breach of natural justice?
Could you repeat that question?
So they not only had this problem with what it is that had happened with her, but they're also saying it was a breach of natural justice. What were the kind of things that they had to then look at? It seems that they said it's not only a problem that the people accusing you are also then making the decision, but they also put it in legal terms, that breach of natural justice. Why was that such a serious breach in this case?
So, as I said, it's fundamental. Once you're being tried by someone, natural justice must obtain. Because otherwise, how then can you say that you received a fair outcome, or that the persons who were judging you didn't have an interest in the end in terms of the outcome of the matter? So natural justice, fair hearing, all of those things are what you would call fundamentals of our legal system. In the sense that every person must feel comfortable that the person who is judging them are independent, are impartial, and will look at the matter from that perspective, weigh everything in the balance, both what the complainant is saying as well as what your defense is saying, and then come to an appropriate decision.
All right, but Nika Pagan, you've also argued that this judgment exposes systemic weaknesses in how the education regulations of 1980 are applied. What specific provisions or gaps allowed a structurally compromised process to proceed as far as it did? Because it looks wrong that the people accusing you are the ones that are doing it as well. What allowed this to go forward for it to be approved by a higher body and now have to go to the Supreme Court?
So the education regulation that is set up, from all indication, it appears that, so the board is the ultimate decision maker. When the board receives a complaint, the board then sends it to a subset of its own body, which is called the personal committee. The personal committee should then meet separately and apart from the overall board, consider the matter, and then thereafter, if they believe that there is nothing there, report back to the board. But if they believe that there's something there that is worth investigating, then their next step is to write to the accused teacher and invite the accused teacher to a hearing. None of that was necessarily followed in this process, in the sense that they received the complaint, or they said that they received a complaint. After receiving the complaint, then they went back to the board. They spoke about how Dr. Fullerton has breached the education regulations and the act and all sort of things, which they argued just demonstrated that what they were saying is that Dr. Fullerton had a prima facie case to answer. But what made matters worse is when you get before the personnel committee, how the act is designed is that the personnel committee ought to be independent arbitrators, right?
So different sets of people effectively should be on that committee.
And that's what I would argue, but I'm telling you how the legislation is set up. So the legislation is set up in such a way where it is still the board or a subset of the board that is trying. This became complicated because it was the board chairman who was so-called complainant. But by the time you get before the personnel committee and their approach, they understood it or treated the matter as though they themselves were the complainant.
So no independence then in them trying it at all?
Correct. So they would say that they would be calling their witnesses. They will be providing evidence to substantiate their position. And even in their report, even the manner in which the proceedings took place, you could see that they were treating themselves as though they were the complainant, and they treated the complainant as a witness of the personnel committee.
So that makes everything messy. We now have the court, though, looked at all of this, found in favor of Principal Dr. Marjorie Fullerton. But it didn't just simply award damages. It ordered reinstatement. How significant is that remedy in employment law?
It is significant because what then that decision signals is that the decision that was arrived at no longer exists. And if the decision to terminate her no longer exists, it means that she shouldn't have been terminated in the first place. And so that what that order is sending a signal to say she really and truly did not lose her job. She is to be back in her job.
But it's a 4-year process that we're looking at. This is long, protracted. There are quite a number of things that would have happened at the school in the meantime. School boards all across Jamaica, therefore, have to take a lesson from this. If they're watching the case, what procedural lessons should they take from this ruling? Because this 4-year process has now undone what a school board did. What should other school boards then be careful about so they don't fall afoul of the same problems?
Well, the most I can say is observe principles of natural justice and fairness. And one of the key things that I take away from this as well is that the JTA will defend its members. They will support their members because JTA has supported Dr. Fullerton along the way, from the inception, from the personnel committee stage, the appeals tribunal stage, and the Supreme Court stage. And so I would say boards should ensure that they follow the rules of fairness. And for teachers, I would say seek your union, seek guidance from them in terms of when you are charged or you're in a predicament, what to do next.
You've spoken about the support that the JTA gave Dr. Fullerton, but this is also a 4-year process. What happens with her now? Does she go to school tomorrow morning? How does this actually work? Because the school board might decide, too bad, so sad, I don't want her in there anyway. What happens next?
Well, the order of the court must be obeyed. And so what we have since done is written to the school to indicate to them that this is the order of the court and they should advise what arrangements they're making for her return.
Out of all of this, persons have been watching this process for years. She asserted herself with the school board. They weren't happy with that. Do you expect the decision to lead to more legal challenges from educators who believe that they were treated unfairly by their institutions?
Well, it should, because in any process that is unfair, a person should fiercely defend themselves. That is the hallmark of our justice system, that it ought to be fair.
The hallmark of our justice system, but sometimes you have to go to court to use that process of justice in order to get it there. Quickly before we go, this is also a church school. There's been a discussion about how church schools operate differently from other schools. Is that also something you think we need to tighten up?
Well, I can offer no comment where that is concerned.
All right.
I don't know sufficiently about the
Council has taken all sorts of ability to say, hold on, no comment right there. Well, it's a case that certainly has been watched for years, 2022 till now. The Supreme Court now has not only said that the decision taken by the Merl Grove board was incorrect, but has now reinstated the principal of Merl Grove, Dr. Marjorie Fullerton, into her position. Thanks for talking to us about this, Attorney at Law Nico Pagan.
Thank you very much.
It was good for you to
Thank
join
you for
us,
having me.
of course, and help us understand the legal implications of this very important ruling. We'll take a break inside Lead Story and come back to you next, because some people want to have babies. Is it because you can't afford it, you're not having any, or are you looking at underlying conditions like endometriosis and the like that are preventing you from having a child? Or perhaps all of the above. We'll talk about that next inside Lead Story.
Everybody wants
want a safer country right now.
One thing about Jamaicans, we might have differences, but we know when something is good for all of us. And when we work together against crime and violence, we are stronger than ever. And that's how we know the Citizen Security Plan can work.
That one that name CSP.
The Citizen Security Plan is an initiative of the Ministry of National Security in partnership with the European Union. It's an all-of-government effort to create safer streets and build stronger communities. Go to mns.gov.jm to learn how you can play your part.
Every dream conquered is another dream gained. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction. 'Cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard. And the music keeps on playing, and the people them I say we are mash up the dance. Oh, what a feeling! Don't stop dreaming. Keep on believing in the power of the feeling. Whatever you want, take a chance. Song in your heart, step in your dance. You got a spark, don't fit it down. Shine your lights on.
Jamaica, make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out, don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is 6.
Now we turn to a conversation about the intersection of economics, health, and family life. As many Jamaicans delay having children for economic or career reasons, do medical realities mean that some people may be losing that option without realizing it? Joining us now are Dr. Loxley Christie, a fertility specialist, and Shelly Ann Weeks, a sexual and reproductive health educator and founder. Good evening to you both. Welcome to Lead Story.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for joining us. Dr. Christie, let me start off with you with a basic biological question. What many people still misunderstand and they brush it off. How does female fertility change as women move from their 20s into their mid-30s and 40s? That allows some people to say, all right, I'll have a baby later on, but maybe not bear those things in mind.
Very important question. It's a very topical one at that. Now, women are born with all the eggs they'll ever have. About 800,000 at birth. Every month, you're going to lose several of those eggs. They're chosen and they are going to just disintegrate. And that happens until you reach menopause at about age 51, when they've all been exhausted. So you will always be losing eggs. The number will fall off slowly and steadily to about age 35. After age 35, they fall off much quicker. By the time you get to 38 to 40, the rate of the number of eggs you have is significantly less. So the difference in terms of number of eggs between 25, 35, and 45 is significantly different. And the other factor other than numbers is the quality. The better quality eggs are going to be the ones that are chosen first and lost. So therefore, by age 35, 45, you'll have fewer eggs with lesser quality, with a lesser potential to become fertilized to go on to give a baby.
All right. That's talking about professional women, but we're also seeing professional men also realizing that, well, they felt hot and sprucey their entire time. They could wait forever until they had a baby. But we're now seeing research as well that says men should also be mindful of their age as they decide to have children. And new studies coming out saying women, maybe you had even more time past 35, maybe up to 45 even. When you see all this information, both impacting men and specifically impacting women, are these the sorts of things that allow people to believe that they have more time? Dr. Christie?
Well, indeed. So, there's a lot of, we're in an information age, and not all information is good information. And much of the information we have is open for interpretation. So people will take information and extrapolate on it. We do see several women having children at an older age. And so everybody thinks that I can do that. Now, not all ovaries are made the same, so not everybody's rate will fall off as much as the others. Other people may be using assisted reproductive technologies, and you don't know. Additionally, people are just trying later. So as a result of that, no, statistically, there's never been a time when when women are having children over the age of 35. But that's not necessarily because it's the optimal time. A lot of that has to do with a shift in social views.
And we've also seen then the reduction in children under 18 having babies as well, which is a huge societal shift also. Shelly-Ann Weeks, let me pull you in here because from your work in sexual and reproductive health education, has a conversation among Jamaican women and men about when and whether to have children fundamentally changed over the past decade or two? And if it has, what's changing?
I don't think there's been a real conversation at all. I think what needs to happen, especially if we expect young people to consider their fertility at an age where, according to the fertility specialists and many other specialists, is when they're younger, then we need to start having conversations with them about reproductivity and having children much earlier. I truthfully don't remember a time when this was an open conversation in most families. As you understand, sexuality still remains a taboo topic in our culture. And so a lot of times, young women just get the threat. If you breed, don't come back into this house. And the young man get the threat. Make sure you're not out there breeding a bad little girl. So that is literally the conversation that a lot of young people get in terms of what happens with pregnancy. So it's a dreaded thing. It's just now because there are consequences that comes with that, and the fact that our birth rate is falling even lower, that we're talking about it now. But the truth is, we have to change the way we talk about fertility with young people, even in the way we approach it from an educational standpoint, because the truth is, we have to start treating our bodies healthier, especially if we intend to delay having children. I mean, there's one thing to have an old body trying to have children, but an old unhealthy body is even worse.
I think that's so important, and especially as you put it in the context of the sort of threats that younger people receive when they're younger. But this is a weird shift, because we've been seeing comments and conversations online where people have been saying, Shelly-Ann Weeks, my mother threatened me not to have any children. Now her friends are having grandchildren, and she's looking at me saying, so when you're going to bring home my grandpicnic? So what is going to go on? What do you believe that older generations then expect to automatically happen between these threats of not bringing home a child, not going out there and having a pregnancy, especially one that you can't maintain and manage, or a young man coming home with a baby, to all of a sudden expecting that their child will move away from this dread that you have inculcated them from a young age, to now them deciding that they're going to not only have children but have multiple children, as these parents who hope to become grandparents are looking for, Shelly-Ann?
Well, I think that, you clearly understand where I'm coming from in terms of the conversation. But one of the things that I really wanted to do, I do a lot of work with teenagers, with college-age students, with young people. And I thought that this whole conversation around reproductive health and low birth rate needed to include them, because the truth is, the people over 40 are not going to be in a position to actually solve our decline in birth rate. So I wanted to find out from them, what are their thoughts? How do they feel about having children? Are they even considering it? I mean, what are the conditions that would make them want to have children in this society? And I've been having conversations with friends and just, discussing it amongst my colleagues and stuff. And people have just dismissed it and said, well, young people don't want to have any children. And I always ask, how do you know? So because I'm interested in data and research, I gathered some young people and I asked them, how do you feel about having children? And let me tell you something. What I found is the opposite of what a lot of people think. I interviewed 40 people between 17 and 21, and only 7 of them said no, they did not want to have any children.
So they do want to have children, but Dr. Christie, many of these professionals delay having children until they feel financially or career-wise ready. So they'll say they want children, but they want to be prepared, Dr. Christie. They come to you now and say, all right, 17 to 21, I couldn't manage the money. I was told, don't have no children if you can't afford it. All right, they're looking now and they're saying, I still can't afford it. I have to now put this on the back burner for some time. When they decide to that for housing costs or career development or financial stability, what are some of the risks associated with delaying pregnancy, Dr. Christie? And do things like IVF, in vitro fertilization or other assistive methodologies allow them to safely do so if they decide to push it back?
So that's a lot of concepts in one. Let's try and go through that.
Yes, one at a time. Work with me, Dr. Christie, because the people have questions and I'm just sending them to you.
All right. So first things first, you hit up, both yourself and Shelley and Abby, a very important point, that the whole social science behind reproduction has changed. The natural science hasn't, still need a good egg, good sperm, a healthy environment, which is the womb, to place them in. What has changed is our social values and how we approach childbearing. So women are becoming more educated. There's no question, the data shows worldwide that as education levels rise, the number of children will fall. And that's good. That's good. We've had great contraceptive campaigns to get those numbers down. Back in the early 70s, each woman was having 4.5 children. That was too many. That was the women starting from teenagers who were dropping out of school and not achieving their potential. We now have contraceptives that are highly effective, very easily available, and affordable. So women are staying in school longer. They are, achieving their goals, and we encourage that. Let me be clear, we encourage that. That's what we want. However, we have to now shift back to the original meaning of family planning. Family planning doesn't mean contraceptive until you are 45. It means planning your family. So, okay, you can go to school. You can achieve your social development. You can get that big job. However, you just don't have to wait until you are at a stage now where infertility becomes a bother because of reduced egg number and potential. So again, it comes back to planning. When is the ideal time? Mid-20s to mid-30s, your fertility potential is very good at that stage. However, beyond that, it falls. I think your next question was the role of assisted reproductive technology. So, as I've said before, the natural sciences hasn't changed much. Infertility affects only about 15% of our people. That's about 60 to 80 million people worldwide. That's 1 in 6 couples. So if you know 6 couples, at least one of them is struggling with infertility.
And that's the man or the woman in that couple, because for many people, they hear infertility, they automatically believe that it's a problem with the woman.
Another great point. So I want this number to be clear for every couple. If we have 10 couples struggling with infertility, 5 out of the 10 times is going to be a male factor, either the male only or both the male and the female having a problem. But as I always say, if the male only has a problem or the female only has a problem, you both have a problem.
I think that's so important that you've highlighted that there. Let's take a quick break here, Dr. Christie, as you continue not only to talk to us about infertility, but we also want to come back and speak to you both about things like endometriosis and how that might also impact women worldwide and here in Jamaica as they look to have their families and they and their partners trying to figure out now if family planning can mean much more than what Dr. Christie said, taking contraceptives until age 45. Let's take a break inside Lead Story and come back here on CVM Television.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Watagwan.
Watagwan.
Datagwan.
Watagwan.
Watagwan. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
Datagwan for Watagwan.
We're continuing our conversation tonight about having a baby here in Jamaica. And we have Dr. Loxie Christie, fertility specialist, and Shelly Ann Weeks, health and sexual health educator, talking to us about this. Dr. Christie, before the break, you were talking to us about infertility, male factor infertility. Is there a female factor infertility? Is that what the other thing is called? But just the knowledge that men and women could be the partners in a relationship, or both of them, that now have infertility impacting their ability to have children. Talk to us now about how couples make it through that.
So, infertility is one of those diagnoses that has multiple consequences. From a psychological standpoint, it's crushing. As Caribbean people, we pride ourselves in particular in our virility, and virility is often associated with the number of children you have. So, a common boast would be, boy, I have 10 children. But that was back in the days when we weren't struggling with the replacement rate issue. But so emotionally, it is a crushing diagnosis. It has women questioning their womanhood, men questioning their manhood, and society is actually really cruel. So counseling is an absolutely important part. So it's a multidisciplinary approach. So we have to get the counselors in for these people. We have to change how people seek healthcare, because men will go to the bar and say, boy, I have to take my hypertensive medication. No, nobody's going to say, boy, I'm going to my doctor because sperm count is low. It's not something we talk about. So we have to have the conversation. We have to get people out earlier. The earlier you seek help, the better the chances you have of getting a solution, and a solution that is affordable, less invasive, and just more acceptable.
I think that's so important, that education being a critical part. Shelly Ann Weeks, though, what a joy to have you on. You're a sexual health and reproductive educator. And this is certainly something that many people don't know about. They don't know about their health care. They don't know about things that can be impacting them. Now, how many women, because you like data, you said, so how many women, and it's not necessarily numerical, but reach their mid-30s unaware that conditions like endometriosis may have been silently affecting their reproductive health for years? And what does that tell you about the state of reproductive and health education in our schools and communities?
Well, I can tell you right now that as natural that period is, there are still individuals that are uncomfortable just talking about their periods. And sometimes their doctor is a man, and they might have issues and they just feel a way explaining to their male doctor that they're having certain issues. And it's not because of anything the doctor did. It's just because they are from this space where period is something that you don't discuss with a man. And so the stigma and the shame continues to be a barrier, even in 2026, about us even getting the help that we need. A lot of the times women end up in doctors' offices because they hemorrhaged, or they fainted because their blood count was so low, or they were in so much pain that somebody took them to the doctor. No, the doctor has to look beyond it just being period pain, and then they discover that, okay, there's something more going on. There is this might be an endometriosis, this might be massive fibroids, this might be, insert reproductive health issue here. So that is why I go back to the conversation about reproductive health has to start earlier, and it has to be more comprehensive. When they hit puberty, they need to understand the connection between where they are right now and how it will affect their choices that they want to make in their future. And so they need to be given the tools from early as to how they take care of their bodies so that they can have children when they're ready to. I see some habits that even young people have right now that is already jeopardizing their fertility. Them using one rum chase another rum. They're smoking all kinds of things. They're very adventurous in terms of drug use and all of that. And those things have consequences and sometimes can impact their fertility. So the wants to change. And part of that is parents need to get involved. A lot of parents don't want to talk to their children about sexuality at all because they think that, well, they're not ready to talk about it, one. And they think that if they talk about it, they're encouraging their children.
And we certainly wouldn't want a parent to put off that conversation.
Or they find out by themselves.
Right, and you don't want the blind leading the blind. So you don't want young children leading other people into conversations about sexual health, or even worse, them exposing themselves to unsafe guidance, like pornography, for example, to be the thing that leads them into sexual and reproductive health. Dr. Christie, though, endometriosis affects about 1 in 10 women worldwide. Help us understand what exactly is happening in the body when someone has that condition that then could impact their fertility.
All right, so just before answering that, I just wanted to take one more thing on to what Shelly-Ann had said quite eloquently, that a lot of the problem is that our women are actually being taught to be too independent. Painful periods are not normal. It's not normal to be balled up and rolling on the ground every month. It's not normal to be missing 3-4 days of school every month. 3-4 days per month means 36 days per year. That's a month. You have women who are missing a month of work or school. And if you think of it, it's happening in your reproductive age. That's 15 to 49. That's when you're at the prime of your life. You're either in school, doing exams, at work, advancing yourself. And you have women who are missing all of this opportunity because of this very painful condition. So I make an appeal to you. Listen to our women. Listen to your children. It starts early, okay?
Yes.
And don't ignore it.
And the regular amount of pain is 0. So that is really what it seems you're saying to us. You shouldn't be...
No. You're going to have... No, most women who will be ovulating will have mild cramps. Mild to moderate cramps.
Here's a problem, here's a problem. I'll tell you this much, Dr. Christie. I like when men say mild to moderate, because women who have a higher pain threshold because of having pain much of the time don't understand what mild to moderate means, because for them, their ability to keep functioning while they're going through it makes it mild to moderate. They only consider it severe if they're rolling. It's very hard then, it seems, to be explaining to these women why they need to come to get help and why it takes women 6 or even 8 years to receive an endometriosis diagnosis, because they just keep pushing through.
Absolutely. And again, it's good. It's creditable that our women are strong and they are, resilient and they can work through things. However, it's not normal. And if the pain is mild to moderate, it cannot be resolved with painkillers, over-the-counter painkillers, then it means you need to get checked out.
So what's happening in your body when endometriosis happens? Help us understand that part.
Okay. So endometriosis is a chronic, painful condition. Chronic, Jamaicans, when we say chronic, we often think it means bad. No, chronic refers to chronos, time. So it's something which is a long-standing disorder. Now, the tissue that lines the inside of the womb is called the endometrium. Endo means inside, metrium, muscular part of the womb. So when it's in the muscular part of the womb, at the end of the menstrual cycle, it breaks down and is shed. And that's fine. That's how it's supposed to function. However, if this tissue gets outside the womb, and 90% of the time it's going to be in the pelvis, then it can cause severe inflammation. And each month, this repetitive cycle will go on of inflammation, pain, repair. You're going to have scarring and adhesions or scar tissue being formed in the pelvis. So what that means, classically, the pain will start a week before the actual menstrual flow. All right, the pain is typically severe lower abdominal cramps, and I can tell you, if a woman tells you that she feels it in her back and you feel like your back tearing open, let me tell you, straight to the doctor. That is not normal.
You are
Let no one
saving
tell you.
somebody's life tonight, Dr. Christie. Somebody has said this before, has felt this before, has thought it was just something to manage with painkillers, or all women go through it. Somebody tonight is hearing you for the very first time and now understanding that this is not normal. But let me just wrap up this conversation with you both, because endometriosis is where we close. But does that mean that there's no help for somebody who has endometriosis and wants a baby, Dr. Christie?
Absolutely not. So the triad with endometriosis is painful periods, painful intercourse, and infertility. Now, most people who have many people who have endometriosis will have no problem with infertility. But again, it's a chronic disorder. So if it's bad now at age 25, then can you imagine at age 35, it's going to get worse. So we have endometriosis as one infertility factor, and then you have your decreasing egg quality, which is another factor. So therefore, if you have your children early, then it becomes a little easier to treat your endometriosis. You have more options, but once you have to be considering preservation of fertility, that decreases your options.
I think that is going to be important for somebody listening right now. It is clear that sexual and reproductive health isn't necessarily something that we openly discuss here in Jamaica, leading to people having all sorts of old wives' tales or ideas in their minds about what could impact infertility. But you both have helped us this evening to clear up a little bit of what's going on. And I think the big message you both are saying is plan. Don't just hit up on discovering that you want a baby and you're putting it off, but you can't get one right now. Plan and be a little bit more aware of that planning process. Dr. Loxley Christie and Shelly Ann Weeks, we're out of time, but thank you so very much for joining us and sharing your insights on this important conversation.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Tonight's program reminds us that the most personal decisions we make about our careers, our families, our future, well, they don't exist in a vacuum. They're shaped by economic policy. The budget debate going on right now could be the reason you have or don't have a child, by the fairness of our institutions, and by biological realities that do not always wait for us to feel ready. Understanding those structures may not make our choices easy, but it does make them informed. That is the story. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and on behalf of the entire CVM production team, thank you for watching Lead Story. Have a fantastic evening, and I hope you stay safe. Up next, CVM News.